Hi, Andrea. Thanks for joining me. It's so nice to see you.
Likewise, excited to be spending some time together.
Yeah, great. Well, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and about Green Latinos?
Sure. My name is Andrea. I'm the Sustainable Communities Program Director at Green Latinos. I'm a born and bred New Yorker, and I have worked at Green Latinos for about just over 3 years. And when I started out at Green Latinos, we were a really small organization. We had like two full-time staff, and we were really just getting our feet wet in a variety of different environmental issues. And for the first time, really had dedicated staff people for each of those issues. And so when I started, I was focused on clean transportation, um, and started figuring out kind of the lay of the land. What were the most important clean transportation issues for the Latino community, and how we wanted to engage in like the super wide spectrum of clean transportation issues that are out there.
Mhm.
My work at Green Latinos has been focused on that. And Green Latinos on a whole is a member-based organization that seeks to elevate and advocate for the environmental and conservation priorities of the Latino community. Um, a goal of one day achieving environmental liberation, but along the way, doing all we can to fight on behalf of our communities and create a more equitable environmental future.
Great, thanks. That's wonderful. And I know that there's a lot of importance in creating a voting bloc of Latinos around environmental issues. And of course, this year and next year, big elections coming up. Can you speak to that issue and how you plan to mobilize for the elections?
Sure. Well, as we all know, right, 2024 is a federal election year. So we are looking at who will be the next president of the United States. But in addition to that, there are elections happening in 46 states. And so that's a really, really, really big opportunity to mobilize across the board and really help people to identify and understand how different folks who are running for office are advocating for or not advocating for the environmental priorities that are most important to our community. So one of the ways that we're doing that, just to give an example, is we are making it really, really let me see how to explain this. We are when it comes to clean transportation, we're making it a huge priority to advocate for the passage of clean cars and clean trucks rulemakings.
Mhm.
And so what we're doing is we're really seeking to show our members who are the people at the state level, who are the people that they have presumably elected and could reelect, who are doing that work, and how
Mhm.
can we as people who hold our elected officials accountable, show up in consistent, meaningful, and powerful ways to hold those officials accountable and make sure that they are protecting our right to have clean air to breathe, clean water to drink, and access to our public lands.
Yeah, that's really important. I know that climate justice and clean air is something that you all and we all value. And we've been inspired by the work that you're also doing on electric school buses, because that's also something that we work on. Can you speak to maybe a success story of your work in that area?
Sure. Several states have passed some kinds of initiatives to support the buying and the sort of transition to electric school buses. And I really can't emphasize enough how important this is for Latino communities. So Latino children and other children of color and low income children are much more likely to ride the school bus to school than white
Mhm.
children.
Yeah.
And school bus depots are disproportionately located in communities of
Mhm.
color and low income neighborhoods. So even if you're not riding the school bus to school, and even if you're not a child, actually, the school bus issue is incredibly pertinent to you. Unfortunately, it's sort of shocking to think about the fact that School buses often use diesel. That means that they're emitting diesel fumes. Often those diesel fumes that they're emitting are breathed in by the children on the school bus. So there's this sort of whole kind of gross, really toxic um, circle of the school bus picking up school children who don't have another choice of how to get to school, and these school buses polluting their communities. And it's been really challenging for people to really understand the depth of this problem. And so we've been working, and many of our allies have been working, including CHISPA, which is part of the League of Conservation Voters, has been working really hard to advocate for the passage of electric school bus programs and policies at the state level in many states. So, just most recently, what comes to mind is a clean school bus program that passed in my home state of New York, where they're going to be allocating, I believe it's $20 million to the purchase of electric school bus and electric school bus infrastructure. And that's going to make a really huge difference for school children across the state. It's also going to make a really huge difference for school children and for policymakers in adjacent states, right? Because children, advocates, policymakers in Massachusetts, New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania can now look to New York and look not only to sort of what New York did, but also the challenges and the failures that New York is facing in the rollout of their program, and use that as an opportunity to build a better program and sort of build upon the knowledge and build also upon the advocacy strategies that have been successful in New York.
Yeah, we have found that peer influence and seeing what your neighbors are doing in other school districts is super important. Well, that's a wonderful example. I know that the majority of Latino communities have report that they have experienced climate change effects. Within the clean energy and climate field, what are the most important issues for Latino communities?
Sure. I mean, Latino communities, unfortunately, are disproportionately impacted by environmental injustice sort of across the board. Everything from, access to clean water, access to green space, the air quality that folks are exposed to just in their everyday lives. When it comes to the work that I do, particularly when it comes to this nexus of clean energy and clean transportation, I think there's a really sort of once in a generation, or once in really a multiple generation opportunity to use clean transportation and use the clean energy transition as a really valuable way to help reduce the pollution in the air and make the air that folks are breathing in every single day of their lives less polluting, and help folks understand that there is an option, right? We don't have to have dirty trucks and cars on the road. We don't have to wait for sort of the slow version of the transition to happen. And we see that in the work that's being done at the state level, where some states are pushing very hard to adapt more aggressive and more fast-moving clean air and clean transportation policies. I think for Latinos, the asthma rate among Latino children, I think, is one of the most shocking statistics, and is a really clear demonstration of the impact that exposure to polluted air has on our livelihoods. And unfortunately, asthma attacks can be not only very traumatic for children and lead to, a much higher rate of hospital visits, high hospital bills, all kinds of sort of economic stressors on parents, but they can lead to death death is a very long-term health consequence. But if you don't actually die, it can lead to other long-term health consequences that impact you into adulthood. So I think that that's something that people have become increasingly aware of and increasingly motivated to fight back against.
Yeah, the absences in schools due to asthma is crazy high. It's really quite startling.
Yeah, and due to asthma and due to other, headaches,
Mhm.
Other, even the effects of exposure to the noise from combustion engines if you live really close to a major roadway or a port. Like all of those things can have a huge impact, not only on your health, both physical and mental, but on, your ability to access education, your ability to get a job, your ability to go outside and build your social ties and be, an active part of your community.
Yeah, it's really extraordinary what transportation electrification can do for our for the benefits of life, right? And
Yeah,
enjoying life.
yeah, there's a lot of potential there and it's really exciting. And I think, we have to elevate that. I think right now, transportation, electrification and, EV advocacy has really sort of, the framing has been very technological and has been very sort of consumer oriented and that's not really going to carry everybody, and it's certainly not inclusive of everybody. I think really what we need to be elevating and articulating and pushing policymakers to move on is the fact that EV electrification represents a new opportunity to have healthier, cleaner air communities.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I know that we just wrapped up Hispanic Heritage Month and y'all were celebrating, as we all should be. Can you tell me a little bit about maybe a few individuals or one individual that's inspired you and that we should know more about?
Sure. Well, first I want to shout out, we have, among our members, hundreds and hundreds of people who are part of the Green Latinos Comunidad who are fighting and advocating in their communities every single day and doing amazing work. And so they are all my heroes and notable leaders to me. And every time we have the opportunity to convene with our members, I learn so much from them. On the other end of the spectrum, we had our 15th birthday party, our quinceañera celebration in DC last month as part of our annual fly-in week, where we bring members to DC and give them the opportunity to meet directly with their elected officials and other key policymakers and advocate for their environmental and conservation priorities. And so this year, because it's our 15th year as an organization, we had a big birthday party. And we invited Dolores Huerta to attend, and she did. And she is just an icon who doesn't quit. She's the co-founder of the United Farm Workers movement alongside Cesar Chavez. She spent her life fighting for better working conditions for farm workers and for the rights of all people impacted by poor labor conditions, including those that are climate related. And she has really been there for our communities every single step of the way. And she has done work far beyond the farm worker movement. She is now active in California on some of the work to push for clean transportation and the clean energy transition, because she recognizes that, the environmental movement is holistic and everything that we can do is important, and everything that we can do to improve the living and working conditions of people has a space in this fight. So she's somebody that whose energy she seems to be everywhere. She seems to be constant, she's in her 90s. She seems to be, unable, unwilling, and, not wanting to ever stop. And she's a big hero of mine and a big hero of ours at Green Latinos.
I love it. What an inspiration. I'm so glad she was able to attend. That's
That's
wonderful.
pretty amazing.
So Andrea, and I know that at times, because of the climate crisis, it can seem very bleak and not a lot of hope out there at times. And I'd love to hear from you about what gives you hope in terms of building a clean energy future.
What gives me hope is, there's so much that gives me hope. I think just hearing how important it is for people to continue to show up and continue to fight for their communities. I think the level of persistence that people have and the level of care that people have shown for their communities across the board, and the level of persistence that people have, community-based leaders have in demanding that their leaders, their elected officials, and other policymakers show up for them, and advocate as much as possible, in as many rooms and as many realms as possible for a clean energy transition. So, the big movement, for example, over the past couple of years in community solar, the movements that have, for example, for like community car shares that are EVs, every single one of those different kinds of fights that are happening at the community level, every single one of those kinds of projects that are communities saying, hey, we are thinking and learning and adapting and proposing ideas based on where the conversation is at. And we want to be a part of this conversation and we want to lead this conversation, I think is incredibly inspiring. And I think is going to push policymakers and is going to push big environmental organizations to really make change faster, because the communities are already there and the communities already want that change. So it's really just a matter of the people with the means and the money showing up and making that change possible.
That is inspiring. Well, thank you so much, Andrea.
Thank
for
you. This was
I
so
really enjoyed
fun.
talking to you. Yes. Good. Well, thank you so much.